This video looks at how to answer a GCSE Statistics Extended Response exam question on data collection, processing and presenting data, using a question taken from the June 2024 Edexcel Higher Paper 2. Students often find extended response questions off-putting, but as they will always be included in the exam paper, it's worth spending some time on how to approach them. Roxanne wants to investigate the resting heart rates for members of her running club. She believes that the resting heart rates will be normally distributed. Here is the plan for her investigation. Data collection. Take a census of the 110 members of the running club, 50 female runners and 60 male runners. Each runner will measure their resting heart rate and input the information into the spreadsheet when they come to the club. Processing and presenting data. Construct a box plot for the resting heart rate of the male runners and a box plot for the resting heart rate of the female runners. Work out the mean, median and mode for the resting heart rate of the male runners and for the resting heart rate of the female runners. Work out the standard deviation for the resting heart rate of the male runners and for the resting heart rate of the female runners. And the question asks us to discuss whether Roxanne's plans for collecting and presenting data are appropriate, and this is for 6 marks. Now you are given more writing space than this on the exam paper. The first point to make is that as this question is for 6 marks, you need to make 6 separate points in your answer. Think of 1 mark per point for this sort of question. Secondly, the question asks you to discuss Roxanne's plans for collecting and presenting data. You therefore need to cover both collection of data and presenting data in your answer. Now, it makes sense to make 3 statements on collecting data for 3 marks and then make 3 statements on presenting data for another 3 marks. In fact, the marking scheme actually stated that there is a maximum of 3 marks on collecting data and a maximum of 3 marks available for processing and presenting data. So if you did happen to make 4 good points on collecting data, you could only get credit for 3 of them. So let's look at answering the data collection element first. Of course, we need to refer to the information in the question and consider whether it is appropriate. Firstly, Roxanne plans to take a census of the 110 members of the running club, 50 female runners and 60 male runners. For this, I'm going to say a suitable sample size is planned because it is representative as it includes all the members of the running club. And that would get me the 1 mark. Going back to the information in the question, we can see that Roxanne also plans that each runner will measure their resting heart rate and input the information into the spreadsheet when they come to the club. In relation to this, I'm going to say that runners measuring their own heart rates may lead to inconsistencies and errors in recording, and that would give me another mark. For my 3rd point, I'm going to say as runners measure their own heart rate, there is no control over extraneous variables such as time of day, and that would get me another mark. So 1 mark for each statement, giving me 3 marks. Now, importantly, it's not sufficient to just say whether Roxanne's elements of her plan were appropriate or not. You need to take it further by saying why it is appropriate or not appropriate. For example, saying the sample size is appropriate, whilst true, would not get you a mark. Similarly, runners measuring their own heart rates is not appropriate would also not get you a mark. In discussion questions like this, make sure you explain why the method is appropriate or not appropriate. Now, in case you had a go at this question and came up with different points, there are a range of points that would be accepted for the marks. For example, some runners may not take their heart rate or fill in the spreadsheet. It would be more appropriate for runners to measure their heart rate when they are at the club. Runners must include their gender on the spreadsheet as well as their heart rate. Runners inputting their heart rates on the spreadsheet will save Roxanne inputting them herself and enables calculations to easily be undertaken. And data input on the spreadsheet may need cleaning, such as to ensure it is all in the same format. And each of these bullet points would gain 1 mark, obviously up to the maximum of 3 available for this element of the question. However, do note that if you said the number of male and female runners are different, again, whilst true, this would not get you any marks, as it doesn't actually matter as long as the analysis is appropriate in comparing males and females. So we've covered the data collection element of the question. We now need to consider presenting data. And again, we're going to make 3 statements to try to get 3 marks. Now, it's important to keep in mind Roxanne's overall investigation and that she believes the resting heart rates will be normally distributed. Again, we need to refer back to the information provided in the question. Firstly, Roxanne plans to construct a box plot for the resting heart rate of the male runners and a box plot for the resting heart rate of the female runners. So I'm going to say a box plot would enable Roxanne to see if the data is symmetrically distributed or skewed, and that would get me 1 mark. For my second point, I'm going to say that a histogram would be better than a box plot, as it would enable Roxanne to see if the distribution was bell-shaped for a normal distribution, and that would get me another mark. The question also says that Roxanne plans to work out the mean, median and mode for the resting heart rate of the male runners and the resting heart rate of the female runners, as well as to work out the standard deviation for the resting heart rate of the male runners and for the resting heart rate of the female runners. So I'm going to say calculating the mean and standard deviation would be useful for determining if the distribution is normal. And that would get me another mark. Other points that you could have made that would also have been accepted are separating males and females for the box plot and calculation of averages is sensible, as there may be differences between the genders. Mean, median and mode would be expected to all be equal if the data was normally distributed. And calculating the mean and standard deviation would enable Roxanne to check if 95% of the data is distributed within 2 standard deviations of the mean. And there would be 1 mark per bullet point available for these points. And that's our completed answer, which would give us the full 6 marks. If you would like more guidance on how to succeed in GCSE Statistics, then please have a look at our website where we have free resources as well as revision courses available.